こんにちは、ヒロです。ゲイリー・ウェインとの対談の翻訳をすべて終えました。今日は3本目、特にこの3本目が超重要です。今回は死海文書、エッセネ派の正体、そしてネフィリム、堕天使がどのようにこの世の中に今後介入してくるのか。皆さんもレプテリアンとかシェイプシフトとか聞いたことがあると思います。私自身も本当にそんなことが起こるのかというのは半信半疑であった部分もあります。今回ゲイリー・ウェインが遺伝学を使って堕天使や神話と現代人の間にどのような DNA のシフトが仕組まれたかというのを説明してくれてます。現代は小説よりきなりです。今後世の中が大きく崩れてまいりますが、その時にハイブリッドネフィリム堕天使が地上に介入してきます。それがどのように仕組まれていくのかというのを今回の動画を見るとお分かりいただけると思います。今回の動画では語られなかったんですけれども、 UFO やエイリアンといったものも全部関係して紐づいてまいります。ゲイリー・ウェインは世界の神話、宗教、貴族、王族、秘密結社、ニューエイジ、スピリチュアル、これらを紐付けることによって歴史の中で共通のストーリーが流れているということをうまく説明することができます。これはこの分野で有名なグラハム・ハンコックも全く同じことを言ってます。もし興味があったらこちらの動画ご覧ください。今回の動画を見ると軽挙の時期なんかも語られてます。軽挙を含めて今後世の中でどんなことが起こってくるのかというのが丸見えになってまいります。ぜひお楽しみください。
37 is talking about that resurrection as Israel is taken in exodus to the wilderness to meet up with the people who fled from Jerusalem and the surrounding area to the wilderness. They're going to be judged there, and there's also the resurrection of Israel at that time. That's the dry bones that are coming up. And so Israel and Judah will, at the sign of Jesus, and it's talked about in the Old Testament under words like banner, standard, an ensign. That's the sign of Jehovah. That's the sign of Jesus for when he's coming. He's coming back for rapture. He's coming back for second Exodus, and he's coming back for Armageddon in the days of his visitation, as Hosea 9:7 talks about. And so this is the reconciliation after they accept Jesus as the one they pierced, as the Messiah that they rejected from the Judean side.
Right.
And lost Israel understands as they're awakening that they're going to be taken into a great exodus as well. And I think the 144,000 are going to tell the people there that. And so they're going to be led by the 7 shepherds and 8 principal men, as well as King David, and Jesus is going to lead that second exodus. He's going to break everybody out from the prisons. And it's going to be greater than the first exodus by exponential sort of levels.
Right.
And so that's how they're brought back into the covenant, and it's in time to be part of the bride at the supper of the Lamb just before the Armageddon battle.
I see. So a few questions. Like Josh Beck and then Ken Johnson's like supporting kind of like Dead Sea Scrolls authors.
Uh-huh.
Essenes.
The Essenes, yes.
Essenes. I heard you were talking about Essenes, that something that you should not trust.
Yes.
Which one is the right understanding? Essenes is off or on?
So, in book 1, I talk about the Essenes as the polytheist religions understand the Essenes.
Yes.
And they accept them as part of polytheism. They are what I would call the Western branch of Kabbalism in ancient Judaic society,
Right.
that we understand as Kabbalism today. So Kabbalism comes from the time when the Southern Kingdom is exiled in Babylon. And so it's the influx of Eastern mysticism that originated with Nimrod, who stayed there, right? And the Magi. And so that Kabbalism comes back at that time, and the Targum comes with it. And that's the first time we have Kabbalism recorded in history, is from that period of time. But the Essenes have an older tradition of the same belief system. It's the second pillar of mysticism, which is Egypt. And as it was exported with Mizraim and Ham as they went to Egypt from Babel, and that this is the religion in what the Essenes believe is the religion of Heliopolis. This is the religion that Moses was raised in and became an adept of polytheism before he realizes who he is, and then ends up being exiled. And then God has humbled and disciplined him, and then sends him back to lead Israel out of Egypt and into the covenant land. And so what the Essenes believe and what the polytheists believe is that Moses brought with him the religion of Heliopolis, and that the monotheist religion came about in the time of King David and King Saul with the monarchy to increase the royal pedigree or mythos of the monarchy, and it's not the true religion of Moses. So Essenes reject Peter, they reject most of the New Testament, and they reject all things that would raise Jesus to a Messiah status. They accept Jesus as a prophet and a teacher, but not the Word of God. So what I didn't put in book one was all the biblical information, and that was the premise of it. But I wanted to let the polytheists testify to who they say he was, or what the church fathers or what historians had to say about the Essenes. So I have a document. Again, people get a hold of me, ask for the Essene document. I'll give you that document. How you know that they're polytheists and that they're another part of, they're essentially a branch of the therapeutate of Heliopolis and an Egyptian religion. Now, what they confuse people with is that they say they accepted Jesus into their belief system, just as they did John the Baptist. So they draft John the Baptist as an Essene as well. But so do the polytheists draft both. They draft Jesus and John, but only to a certain degree. They don't give Jesus the deity status, or the Word of God status, right? So accept him as a mortal prophet. So there's two levels of accepting Jesus. But what's really kind of interesting as we understand the Essenes is that word Nazarene, as they use, it's a double entendre. And
what is it?
Double meaning.
Double meaning. Okay.
They combine another word to be Nazarene, and Nazarene is understood as Jesus is coming from Nazareth, right? The word for their Nazarene comes from the Hebrew word Natzar, not Nazarene, and it doesn't mean city of Nazareth. It means hidden knowledge. It means occult knowledge. It means the knowledge of the gods. It means watchers of this hidden information. That's who they are. They feel they have the knowledge of the gods passed down through history with them, and that's the knowledge that they're protecting. And these Essenes, they would protect the names of the angels that they worshiped even upon torture and death. They were that loyal to the fallen angels. So I know a lot of people disagree with me. I've probably sent out thousands of people this document on these things. Only one person has come back to me and said, "You make a really good case. I just don't want to accept it." And all of us said, "Wow, I better be careful with these." And I've had discussions with American Essenes, and believe me, when I say they discount most of the Bible, they do. They are not Christians. They are a different belief system.
Did you talk to Josh Peck on this issue? Because I feel like he's very deep into the Essenes and then like a Dead Sea Scroll calendar.
Yeah, he thinks there might be two groups of Essenes, and
but there are two groups.
But it's the writings of the Essenes from the Dead Sea Scrolls that testifies against them and the historians. So if there's a modern group that likes to call themselves Essenes but are true Christians, they're a completely different sect than what the other Essenes are. So be careful with that. And do get the document and decide for yourself. Ask for the document, or I'll send it to you. I'll try and remember it. I'll try to remember the ones I promised you tonight.
Yeah.
And I'll send them to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have recorded anyway. One more question. Actually, I watched one like your talk show, and then you were mentioning like British royal bloodline goes back to the Dracula, and then that sounds very interesting to me. Connecting with maybe a near future, those like things to happen. What do you say? Like, what would you think it would happen? Is Nephilim coming back to the earth in some form with the bloodline of like a royal families and stuff?
Well, Jesus said that the fig tree generation, and there's a specific generation where all the events that he predicts will be fulfilled. I mean, heaven and earth will pass away, but his words will never pass away. He's quite clear on this. And immediately following that fig tree generation is another overarching signs to the list of chronological events that he provided. And it's going to be like the days of Noah.
Right. Exactly.
Now, giants and angels walked amongst us both before the flood and for a short time after the flood.
Right.
And that we have the descendants of those giants through the royales. Royales meaning, as you take that etymology back in Western language, kings of God with the divine right to rule, just as Rex Deus is another term, Latin term for kings of God, and that these are the royales. And so we have with the beast empires that have come down through history, these royales that are ruling, and they're always trying to bring about, you know, an antichrist figure like a Nebuchadnezzar or the Pharaoh that's talked about in Ezekiel. It could be Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great. I mean, all and wannabes all around the world if they could get the world empire and get control. And Michael fights against that from happening. As he fights against Persia and Greece in the book of Daniel. And so these giants have these descendants that are going to be part of the 10 king empire from around the world. And these are groups of nations. These are empires in themselves that will form the seventh world empire, but it'll be a true global empire this time. And there's been a lot of misunderstanding of those prophecies, but these are empires. They're called empires, and that these are descendants of the giants. These are royales for the most part. And what's interesting in the King James Version in Deuteronomy 43, Daniel 2:43, it has the kings of this end time empire are going to mix their seed with the seed of humans. So it's describing a specific race. Just as you have the branch of the terrible ones in Isaiah 25 that are going to be removed from the earth in the end time. And just as Psalms 21:8-10 talks about this seed that's going to be removed from the seed of men in the time of his wrath and anger, in the time of the year of the Lord's wrath, in the last year of the last 7 years. So you have all of these verses and more that are talking about this sort of seed line. So we're going to have that. But Daniel 2:43 suggests maybe these are not just descendants, maybe they're actually real giants that are going to be mixing their seed with humans. To try and create new dynasties, one would presume, because that's what they do. So that's a possibility. Or you could take that back to Hebrew. You could also have a possibility that they would be possessed by a demonic spirit, a disembodied spirit of the giant, because they're not permitted to sleep and they're not permitted to go to heaven. When humans die, according to the Bible, Old and New Testament, we go into a sleep state, and our spirit goes back to heaven from where it came from. A counterfeit spirit doesn't go to sleep, isn't allowed into heaven, and is either in the pit prison, wandering the earth as demons, or they have made it through their rituals and help to the other world or the underworld, where they can be with the gods. Whether that happens or not, but what we do know is we've got demons, disembodied spirits, and they're not disembodied human spirits. It's the counterfeit spirits that that are dealing with. They could be entering into these kings, and just as you have demon possession, but with the true adepts of the occult, and this is again a common understanding through the various shamans and priests and ancient knowledge, that you can control these demonic spirits, like the vagabond ghost spirits of Asia. Like particularly, I'm referring to the Chinese reference to that. You can use talisman, you can use certain words, you can command them by name to control them. So it may not be that conflict that's going on with the host spirit and the demonic spirit within the Oiketerion, the soul and the body, which is of this world. It would be more of a symbiotic or a controlled relationship, but you would receive additional power. So that could be part of that meaning. But we also have to be aware that there's a passage in Ecclesiastics, Ecclesiastics 1, that talks about nothing is new under the sun.
Right.
What was will be again.
Yes.
And as that moves on into verse 17 and 18, it's telling us that the understanding of this wisdom and knowledge is only going to bring you grief and sorrow. So that what happened before the flood with the giants and the gods, what happened after the flood, what happened with the beast empires throughout the history, is going to happen again with the seventh empire, which infers that we're going to see giants somehow, some way, whether or not it's just the descendants, either another creation of giants, because they would grow to adulthood very quickly, according to the history of giants around the world, or some were saved either before the flood and or after the flood in another dimension, in some sort of stasis chamber off the earth, somehow with help of the fallen angels, to reinsert into the world to parade us into destruction, and destruction by fire, because they want to destroy the world again. And they want humankind destroyed from the face of the earth. And they want to do this before the ordained time, which they think might win their case. But their fate was sealed once Jesus rose on the Sunday. In fact, in 1 Peter 3, he's in Tartarus, the place of the prison, of the pit prison, and he's talking to the angels and the terrible giant ones of the terrible ones in the pit prison. And yeah, I think he's telling them, my speculation here, but he's talking to them. And it's while he's in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights, because he's not dead, he's not sleeping, he's not human. His body was human, but his spirit is created from the beginning, and is Alpha Omega. And so he's telling them that your rebellion is over. And when I resurrect on the Sunday, your fate to go to the lake of fire is sealed. And through the resurrection, humans are going to be resurrected, and they're going to judge you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's almost what I wanted to know for now. Gary-san, it's such a precious information for me today. So if there's some opportunity with my new topic, please let me invite you in the future again.
Absolutely. So for video, you have to book it for the fall. Over the summer, I can only do audio. And so, yeah, if you wanted to book another one, let's line one up for October or November, and we'll get it booked. Because once I come back from my cottage, I'll have videos lined up till almost Christmas. So my advice is book sooner than later. There's one thing that I just thought I would throw out for people who may not be familiar with all of the language in the Bible and some of the terminology, and that in the East, it's the dragon creator gods that create everything both before and after the flood, and that this would be equivalent to the serpentine dragon-like gods of Egypt or Greece, or it's a theme, and or the plumed serpent or the feathered serpents of the Kisha Maya and First Nations in North North America, Central America, South America. And biblically, the dragon angels are seraphim
Right.
that are mentioned in the Bible. They are six-winged
Right.
seraphim angels. So they're the same
Right.
thing as the Nagas in India. These are part of the watchers who rebelled, that were sort of them and the cherubim, from which I think the Tengu are associated with.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Because you get like the Tengu priests and warriors in Japan, and they're from the Tengu gods, and very much similar to the Tengu watcher gods in China, that also produced other types of giants, like the bird giants. Or, I mean, if you look at a cherubim, it has the face of a human, it has the face of a bull,
Right.
it has a
Yes.
face of a lion, and a face of
Mm-hmm.
an eagle. So they
Right.
would take one face when they took their physical form, and then
Right.
when they passed on that DNA,
Mm-hmm.
they would pass on that look. So if they took a bird eagle face, you would have something like a Tengu warrior or priest. And in the Popol Vuh, they're called the Zabalba, and also the house of Camazotz, which are the bat ones. And you also have falcon gods and raven gods throughout the world. So
Right.
this is a reflection of a cherubim. You also get lion warriors all over the earth as well,
Uh-huh.
and another face of the cherubim.
Well,
And I think the
you
dark
mentioned like
and
a serpentine face, like a hybrid. Was
well, yeah,
there?
the seraphim had a serpent face. So when they took a physical form with a serpent face, they would produce kings that would look like them. And all the early kings, both before and after the flood, were described as serpents from these serpentine dragon gods. And all the pantheons are dominated around the earth by these serpentine or dragon-like gods. So the giants would take on the DNA of the gods and would have similar sort of looks. And then you've got like jackal gods like Anubis around the world, or Nebaz, which is a barking god in the Bible. And so you have these dog warriors all over the world as well. And so they would be from the jackal gods.
Mm.
So just something to sort of look at, sort of the commonality of the stories around the world. So, and then we have like in Sumeria for reliefs of the Anunnaki, which are watcher gods. So it's going to be one of the four groups of watchers. And they do this ritual around this high technology tree. Some people call it the tree of life, but it's some sort of technology. In one version, it has a human head with wings and stocky, and they're doing a ritual around it. Then you get the exact same scene on other reliefs, and they have a bird's head.
Mm-hmm.
They're representing two faces of different times of cherubim taking a different form on the earth. So it just sort of makes sense once you start to connect all the dots from what's in the Bible to what's around the world. And, you know, one thing I try and tell Christians is that the Bible is the most preternatural book ever written. We shouldn't dismiss what might be the politically incorrect preternatural nature, but only accept some of it. That makes that there is no consistency in that, and that we should learn about it and understand the world better.
Definitely, definitely. So do you have any comment for Japan in the end?
Well, I think because there's going to be 10 groups of nations, I think Japan's going to be one of those 10 empires of the end time.
Really?
Yeah.
As a Japanese emperors, like a role?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I think separate from China. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think there will be, you know, nations that aren't naturally sort of Asian. So you might have some, you might even have Australia or something that's part of that empire of that area, because it's going to be like a trading bloc and an alliance. And so it's going to form. And I think they're part of not only what's called, you know, the kings of the East that are talked about in Armageddon, but also the Sinim, which are the people of the East, that migrated, and with the bloodlines of the Sinim as the royales of that group that went east. And that's going to include China, it's going to include Japan. And, the Yamato bloodline is, the longest one in the world that's continuous and reigning.
Right.
One would think that they're going to play an important end time role. We don't know from a biblical perspective how big of that influence, but it's going to have a significant piece in the end time empire. And then just by inference, it's going to be big part of the first 3.5 years and the last 3.5 years. So expect a continued leadership role in the prophetic sense coming out of the East. And one of the things, that's another thing that I try and get across to Christians, is that the Bible isn't just talking about as it affects the United States. And I'm from Canada, but it's a global thing.
Yes.
And we have to think larger than our local country when we're trying to
Exactly.
understand these types of things.
Yes.
Just as we have to understand that in the Exodus, there's going to be people from not only the United States and Canada awakened and part of the Exodus, every place on the earth will have people that are in the Exodus.
I agree. Thank you very much. The one last thing, do you think the hybrid human is on the earth with the Nephilim physical DNA, not like a spiritual driven?
I think there's the DNA of the Nephilim still on the earth, or the Rephaim. Yeah, so there's different what they call genses, and so like the bloodline from Zeus in Greece after the flood is the Creta gens from Crete, and you have the Julia gens and the Fabian gens of the Italians, of the Romans and the Etruscans, and that goes back to Romulus and Remus and Ares, who created as the godfather of Romulus and Remus giants. You have the Elbe gens, which is more from I think more of a Tuatha De Danann bloodline, and a bloodline of the Anjou. And so you have all of these different genses around the world that they keep in the genealogies, which is a derivative word of the gens from Latin. And that they have these family trees that they call the genealogical or thalamic tree of the bloodlines of the royales. And they keep their bloodlines right into prehistory. So when I mentioned King Charles III now, and he said this when he was Prince Charles, he takes his genealogy back to Vlad the Impaler that Dracula was based on. And Dracula is just a allegory for the patriarchal bloodline of the royales,
Right.
and the blood drinking aspect, and it means son of a watcher, son of a dragon.
So even
Dracula.
though they look like
now hang on, I'm not quite finished with that.
Yeah, okay.
So that comes through the Hanover German dynasty, which is the Windsors replaced the Stuart dynasty from Germany, and through the Middle Europa intermarriage of the royales, that is how the Vlad the Impaler's bloodline comes through King Charles. And Vlad the Impaler was this classic Tuatha De Danann, Scythian giant, with red hair, pale skin, hazel eyes again, the red-haired variety, and that he takes his genealogy, or their genealogy, back to a tribe in Greece, the Agrathi, which are Scythians, and descended from Hercules, son of Zeus and alchemy, so part of the Cretagens.
Right.
And they keep those genealogies so that they know where they fit in the whole hierarchy of the royal bloodlines.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
I see. Thank you very much. So they completely look, even though they look like human, they have some of that.
They still have some of that DNA. And so Rh negative is thought to be, part of that manifestation from the genes, because you can't add something that's not there, right? So it's missing the D antigen, but it gets inserted into the human blood system at some point in time. But if you understand it as the intermarriage of humans with the giants so that they could survive after the flood, that's the gene that comes along. The gene of Isis is what it's also understood as, and the elven or the fairy gene is another word for it. And it produces through the female how it's traditionally carried through that Rh negative blood. And again, I have a great document, Rh negative blood, and so the traits are absolutely, in the surveys, absolutely extraordinary what people say about themselves that have Rh negative blood. So I'll send you that document as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. It was a great conversation with you. I hope to invite you in the future again. So Gary-san,
I hope you will invite me as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.